In this video, I'm going to teach you how to just teach better and speak clearer. How to stop being boring, confusing, uninteresting. And this is for every teacher, parent, leader, preacher, consultant, content creator. If you are a person who talks to people and you want the words that you say to land in a place where something can be done about it, this video is for you. You're like, well, my content doesn't get any engagement on social media. This video is for you. I'm a pastor and people are fall asleep while I'm preaching. For you. I'm a public speaker and I never get a stand. For you. I'm a teacher and my students hate me. For you. If you want to get better at impacting lives, this video is how you're going to do it. So, in this video, I'm going to teach you a formula and some frameworks to become a better communicator. I quoted this morning already, but I'm going to quote it again. My daughter said to me one time, "Dad, you know what? The biggest problem in communication is thinking that it happened. How would you like to be a better communicator, regardless of domain, so that you can speak clearly and with conviction and know that if they didn't get it, it wasn't because you didn't bring it." I was talking to my good friend Kenny Grant last night. I said, why is it that the people who have the least to say take the longest to say it? Like you ever listen to somebody who do you ever listen to a preacher who can't preach? He cannot land the plane. A teacher who can't teach can't land the plane. A public speaker can't land the plane. They just ramble and ramble and ramble. I'm like, it's like they're flying around for 17 hours with no fuel in the plane. Well, after you learn these principles, if you will apply them, that won't be you. If it's ever been you, it won't be you anymore. If it's never been you, it's just going to take whatever you teach, whatever content you create. If you want to write books, create courses, become a business consultant. You just want your children to turn out right. This is, I promise you, what you've been looking for. Instead of leaving people clueless when you speak, you'll leave them speechless and ready to march. Because communication is a skill. It is not a talent. Talents are God-given. Skills are acquirable. And you can be the biggest introvert in the world and still become a great speaker. And I know I'm an introvert who operates as an extrovert when I'm in charge of the arena. I am not an extroverted person. If you see me at a conference, you might not see me unless I'm speaking. I will sit in the back in a corner and mind my own business, and hopefully nobody notices me. And let's don't even talk about mine at a party. Hey laughter, I might as well be wallpaper. I'm such a wallful floral wallpaper. I'm such a wallflower. I am not the life of the party. Now, you might find that hard to believe, but it is what it is. But even if you're an introvert, you will become a better communicator because you will have tools. They say whoever they are, right? They say that public speaking is most people's greatest fear. They fear public speaking more than death. And I'm like, how's that possible? Well, I believe that most people fear public speaking because they don't know what's going to happen. And the sense of uncertainty that they have about whether or not they're going to get their message across, whether or not their message is going to be received, whether or not they're going to be judged is so heavy to them that they can't really even think about the content that they desire to communicate. And so a couple things we got to understand first before I even get into this. A couple things we got to understand. Let's start by understanding why people struggle with communication before I even get into how to be a better communicator. Why do people struggle with communication? Number one reason people struggle with communication is because they've never learned how to think. They've been told their whole life what to think, but never been taught how to think. That's number one. Number two, you can't speak any more clearly than you can think, right? Because the words that come out of your mouth, before they came out of your mouth, they were thoughts in your head. And if the thoughts are all jumbled up, the words that come out of your mouth are going to be more jumbled than the thoughts. And understand this, even if you start with your belief, oh no, the other reason is if you start with your belief and then add cognitive bias to it, it makes learning anything new very, very difficult. So one of the reasons people can't learn is because they think they already know. One of the biggest hindrance to learning is thinking that you already know. It says it like this in Hosea 4:6. It says, My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Well, God's people had the Torah, they had God's law. So how is the people who have God's perspective have a lack of knowledge? Well, they have a lack of knowledge. It tells us in the next verse, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. So it wasn't that they couldn't learn that they didn't learn. It was that they wouldn't learn that they didn't learn. And so resistance to truth keeps us in ignorance, and it keeps us from learning. Now, what is the number one thing that causes people to not want to learn something? To resist truth, thinking that they already know. That's why it's very important to not have answers that we can't question. I would rather have questions I can't answer than answers I can't question. Because if I have an answer and it's truth and I question it, it will always hold up. I don't have to be afraid that a truth is going to be proven wrong. It's a truth. The truth never has to hide from a lie. The truth never has to hide from error. The truth doesn't need to silence error in order for it to exist. But error has to silence the truth in order for it to exist. And that is why one of the greatest wars that's ever been waged in the history of the world is the war against truth. So how can I become a better teacher, a better communicator, a better parent, a better business leader, a better coach, a better consultant, a better author? How can I make it so that when I'm talking to people, my message lands? Okay, first I'm going to give you the foundation of being a good teacher. Okay, the foundation of being a good teacher. And in fact, I'm going to write it on my trusty digital blackboard. The foundation of being a good teacher is Tada. Okay, one moment. There we go. Okay, the foundation of being a good teacher is my keyboard popped up and I can't figure out how to close it. Okay, number one is discover the truth. So when you discover the truth, you're looking for an answer to something. Now, when you're seeking to discover the truth, one of the biggest problems that I see that teachers have, teachers, preachers, speakers, whatever, they do research to talk about something. They do research for the purpose of teaching and not for the purpose of learning. So when I'm discovering truth, when I'm looking for truth, I'm not looking for the truth so I can teach it. I'm looking for the truth so I can learn it. And the reason I want to learn it is so I can live it. And see, then if I learn the truth, if I'm looking for the truth so I can learn it, and then I'm discovering the truth so I can live it, now I'm not just teaching what I think I know about. I'm actually teaching what I've learned and lived. Does that make sense? And so one of the things like when I'm teaching business, is I know I don't have to worry about whether anything I'm saying is accurate or not, because I don't teach theory. I only teach stuff I've done. So if I say this works in business, I'm not hoping it works. I didn't read it in a book last weekend and hope that person was right. I've already done this. I know this works. So I discovered a truth, and I'm discovering the truth, not so I can teach it. I'm discovering the truth so I can learn it, and I'm learning it so I can live it. And then once I learn it so I can live it, then I can put it in language, wrap it in language that other people can, because then I become the message instead of just the messenger. Are y'all tracking? Okay, cool. So then once I discover the truth, the second thing I have to do is I have to dissect it, dissect the truth. Now, what does that mean? That means I start peeling it back layer by layer. Okay, what does this mean? You want to take your life to another level. You ready? Read more books. But just like when you're reading the Bible, turn that reading into a school zone and not a super information highway. What does that mean? Slow down so some learning can take place. Slow down to do what? If you're reading a book, every time you come across a word that you don't know the definition, look it up. The more you increase your vocabulary, the bigger your experiential world gets. I was listening to a Jim Rand program a long time ago. He said they did some research on inmates in prison and they found something they weren't looking for. What did they find? They found that one common trait that these inmates had that they weren't expecting was they had a very small vocabulary. Isn't that fascinating? And then he said this, words are not just a communication tool. They are the window through which we see the world. And if you have a very small vocabulary, you don't need a very big world to live in. That's what I said. And then I said it backwards. I said, wow. And so the more words we have in our vocabulary, the more clearly we can see everything, because truth is light. And in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. The Word was with God, and the same was in the beginning with God. And all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made. It's fascinating, the next thing it says, in him was the life, and the life was the light. In him the Word was the light of men, but the light shined in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. So the more words we have in our vocabulary, the more vision we have, the more illumination we have, the more we understand the world, the more of the world we can actually see what it is. So we have to dissect the truth. We have to break it down into its individual components. I talked about that last week, so I'm not going to redo that. Okay? We dissect the truth, and then we demonstrate the truth by living it. So that's number 3. We demonstrate it. Demonstrate the truth, and then lastly, then we declare the truth. So it will make your life so much easier. Do you understand, if you do something over and over and over and over and over and over again, you don't need an outline to remember what you did, right? You don't need to memorize a script to remember what you did. You just talk about what you did in the order in which you did it. So, like, who in here has a really amazing dish that you make, and you can, like, when you first made it, maybe you need a recipe book. But now you just like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, throw it together, and oh my goodness, this is the best I've ever write. How many? Right? Why? Because you've done it so many times. You've got that thing on rinse and repeat. Yes. Well, what happens when you really learn a lesson that you've learned to the point of living it is now you can talk about it and put that thing on rinse and repeat. I remember when my first public speaking was on a Sunday school bus. I had my hands in my pocket. I looked at the ground and I said more than any other word in my vocabulary. And I'm only talking to like elementary school kids, and I'm looking at the ground. My hands are in my pocket. And so my co-captain Kim, she said when we got done, she said, "Ma, you can't just stand up there with your hands in your pocket looking at the ground saying, that was a good lesson." So next time I didn't have my hands in my pocket, right? And so, but why? Because I'm new at this. I'm talking to elementary school kids, and I'm an introvert, and I'm like, I can't even look at them. I don't have that problem anymore. Why? Because I just teach stuff I'm living. I don't need to make some new stuff up. Okay, cool. So that's number 1. That's the foundation. Now this is the part, this is going to get so juicy. You have to understand that there are 4 levels of learning that exist. And if you are going to be a good teacher, you have to teach on all 4 levels, or you're going to create a class of confused students, followers, whatever. There are 4 levels of learning. Now, what's interesting is all numbers have significance. And I think this is important. It's important for us when we dissect the truth. What happens is we recognize patterns, and then we'll go dissect a different truth in a totally different domain, in a totally different discipline, and we'll see that the pattern is the same as another discipline, because all principles are microcosm of each other, right? And so what happens is as you're studying in Hebrew culture, like, all numbers have significance. They mean, like, the number itself has meaning. Like, 1 is the number of unity, the unity of God. How sweet it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. 2 is the number of holiness or separation. 3 is the number of God. 4 is the number of the earth, which is fascinating because there's 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall. There are 4 directions, north, south, east, and west, right? There are 4 elements: earth, wind, water, and fire, right? And so, like, a lot of times when we find principles in the earth realm and in Daniel's, Daniel's in the Daniel prophecy, there are 4 beasts there. Like, 4 is the number of the earth. It's really fascinating. But we've talked about the 4 levels of value from Genesis chapter 1. Well, today I'm going to talk to you about there are 4 levels of parenting, by the way, for 4 levels of child development. But there are 4 levels of learning. Therefore, if you are going to be a good teacher, become a better teacher, you must teach from all 4 levels. And you're going to see clearly, like, people are going to come to your mind who've attempted to teach you things, and you wonder why you couldn't get it. You're going to recognize why you couldn't get it when you see this. There are 4 levels of teaching, 4 levels of learning. And so I'm going to start from lowest to highest. I'm going to build a 4-level staircase just like we do at the 4 levels of value. And the lowest level of learning is tactics. And tactics answer the question, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Now, the deception in seeking tactics and teaching tactics is that people believe that if they know what to do, that's what they need. But I want you to just take a pause for a second and think about yourself and think about how many things that you already know to do. You already know what to do and you just don't do it. No, I ain't doing that. And I ain't doing that. Right? Okay? No, not that either. All right. Right? So that ought to let you know that what, and by the way, if you're a coach or a pastor or a consultant or a teacher and a student comes to you, if they are new in a discipline, the questions that they will ask you will be tactical questions because they think if they know what to do, they will do it. You have to have a high enough level of awareness to know that just because they know what to do does not mean they're going to do it. Jesus did not lack teaching his disciples what to do. They knew what to do. They just didn't always do it. Just like you and me, right? This is what I'm saying. Making sense. So tactics are the lowest level. If all you teach is tactics, the people who learn from you will be limited in their ability to experience the thing that you're teaching them to do. Y'all tracking. And I'm sure y'all know what the next one's going to be. You already know. I'm going to do it in a different color. You already know. Then the second one is strategies. So strategies answer the question, when and why should I do it? So strategies to answer the question, I want to do the right thing. I want to do the right what at the right time for the right reason. If I do the right thing at the wrong time, okay? What if, just to show you that every domain requires a sequence, what if you want to bake a cake and what you did is you put all your dry ingredients in and then you put the dry ingredients in the pan and then you put the pan in the oven. Then you took it out and then you added all the wet ingredients. Do you have a cake? No, you have a mess, right? You need strategies to apply to your tactics. And so when you're teaching, yes, teach people tactically what to do, but make that the smallest part of what you're teaching. Strategy needs to be more of it. And by the way, the 2 highest levels need to be even more, right? And so you're teaching people what to do, when to do it, why to do it, and now you are already a better teacher than somebody who only teaches tactics. Do you ever read a how-to book and all it is a list, then do this, then do this? I mean, the whole book could have been then do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. And they thought they showed you something and you're like, what? Right? So strategies. Now, the next one, this is where it starts to get real juicy, is principles. Principles are universal laws, the universal laws that govern everything that exists. Principles are the law of gravity, law of energy conservation. Everything is energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes form, entropy. Anything left to itself tends to move more and more towards disorder. The law of polarity. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The law of momentum. An object in motion will continue in motion unless it's acted upon by an outside force. And on and on and on and on and on the laws go, right? So these are universal principles. Gravity, what goes up must come down. We know that universal principles exist. I believe that principles are God's automation. So God set it up in such a way that when you do this, that's going to happen with so many things. Why? Because if you didn't have principles, you couldn't have processes, right? Because if it worked one way one time and a different way the next time, you could never accomplish anything. There could be no technological advances were there not principles, right? And people try to pretend that there aren't principles because they don't want to subject themselves to the principles that exist. So they will pretend that there are no principles. No, it doesn't matter what you're doing. There are principles. There are universal laws that govern whether or not the thing you're working on is going to work. If you're tracking, let me hear you say, I'm tracking. Okay. So these universal principles don't care who you are. They don't care how old you are, how young you are, whether you're a man or you're a woman. They don't care whether you got a degree or don't have a degree. They don't care if you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic. They don't care about your ethnicity. They don't care about any how much money you have. Principles just do what principles do, and they always do it. Now, the more principles you understand, because all principles are microcosms of each other. The more principles you understand, the more principles you become aware of, the better teacher you become, because those principles that you understand will reveal patterns that existed before you got here. And so you can see something that you're unfamiliar with, but it reminds you of something that you are familiar with. And you will know what to do next, because like practicing principles and learning principles is how you increase your ability to think critically. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay? The highest level of teaching, the highest level and most important that these are required, this top one, if you get this one, you'll be one of the best who ever lived. You can forget about the rest. Like, you won't realize when you get to this top level of teaching, you won't ever see anybody again as competition. Like, oh, what about that person? Like, there's no competition. This top level, oh, it is a vibe all by itself. It's called essence. Now, what is essence? So essence is this is how I describe it. Essence, I had to give it its own page. That's how deep it is. Essence is the character, nature, and inclination of God. What does that mean? Snorts? How do I teach from the character, nature, and in-depth and an inclination of God? Here's how. Ephesians 4 says, "Be therefore followers of God as dear children." That word follower is imitators. Be imitators of God. Okay, so if I'm going to teach from a place of essence, I'm going to imitate the character, the nature, and the inclination of God in my teaching. What does that mean? Okay, well, here's the character of God. Let's start with character of God. God's character, care. I left out a whole bunch of letters. Halafter, okay, character. God's character is that he is holy. Now, when I say holy, you think religion, right? You think spiritual, but the word holy literally means special. It means unique. It means set apart, one of a kind, priceless. All of those could be synonyms to the word holy. Are y'all tracking? Remember what God said about his holiness. I am the Lord thy God. I am holy. And then what did he say after that? There is none else. So when I'm talking about being holy, I'm talking about recognizing your identity, operating from a place of your true identity, so freeing, which means, okay, so when I was younger, I'm still fairly young. I'm only 64, okay. When I was younger and I first started learning how to preach, I would listen to preachers and I would imitate them. Not while I was preaching, but just while I was listening to them, I would imitate R.G. Lee. I introduced your Naboth. Naboth was a citizen little town of Jezreel, was a good man that which was evil, clave to that which is good. This good man had a little vineyard which was close by, a palace to the king. This vineyard had come to him as a cherished inheritance from his forefathers. Because of this, all of it was very dear to his heart. I introduced you Ahab, the vile human toad who squatted on the throne of the nation, had command of a nation's wealth and a nation's army, but no command of his lust and appetites. He wore fine clothes, but he had underneath these clothes a wicked heart. He ate good food, but he had a starved soul. He lived in palaces, yet he tormented himself for one little bit of land more. He was a king with a crown, a throne, a scepter, and a great army. The Bible says this to us about him. There was none like under Ahab, who sweat himself to work wickedness in the sight of the Lord. Can you imagine me talking like that? High laughter, right. Or R.G. Lee would say, who was it that put the moon and high laughter, the sun in the heavens, and decked the heavens with the stars, and smoothed out a chaotic place, and scooped out a place with his hand, put the water in and tied it down with a robe of sand, and called it oceans. He put a garment of green over the valleys, and the mountains and the hills, and bund it up with lies and garlands, and woo it with lapping daffodils. That's the God. My friend I serve, can you imagine me talking like that? Okay, so what I did was like, and then you hear people preach, and there was a time like there were preachers who I tried to sound like. And what ended up happening is I didn't sound like them. And my good friend Kenny Grant said to me one time, he said, I'm gonna tell you something, bro. Don't ever try to be somebody else, because if you do, nobody's there. I said, Kenny, what you mean nobody's there? He said, the person you trying to be ain't there, and you ain't there, so nobody's there. So you want to be a speaker, you don't need to be Tony Robbins. Amen. You don't need to be Myron Golden. You don't need to be Martin Luther King Jr. You don't need to be, what's the guy's name was a president? Bill Clinton. You don't need to be Bill Clinton. You don't need to be Barack Obama. You don't need to be Donald Trump. Just be yourself. God made you. And then guess what he did? He smiled and broke the mold. Like, you don't have to try to be somebody else. You don't try to sound like somebody else. Kenny Grant, in my opinion, like best communicator I've ever known in my life, but I don't try to sound like him. Why? Because I can't much as anyway. Y'all pray for me. Okay, I can't sound like him. So guess what I can do? I can sound like me and celebrate him. Amen. Does that make sense? And so be yourself. Operate from your own true identity. I'm not gonna like I've had coaches. I'm not going to attempt to be any of my coaches. And if I quote somebody, I'm going to tell you I'm quoting them. I'm not. I don't want you to think that I came up with something that was somebody else's idea. I'm going to walk in my identity and just be who God made me, and understand that who God made me is enough for the thing he put me here to do. And if I can teach from the place of my identity without attempting to be somebody else, now I'm free. Come on. Okay, y'all are tracking. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say the character of God. What do I mean when I say the nature of God? Wow, this is so awesome. The nature of God is that this is a really interesting thing to say about God, is that he cannot lie. Hasnort's God refers to himself as the God who cannot lie, not who does not lie. Can't lie. Don't that make you scratch your head? How? But wait, you put a restriction on yourself. You can't lie. So this is talking about operating from a place of integrity. Operating from a place of integrity. And when you operate from a place of integrity, you don't tell the truth because you're afraid you're going to get found out if you lie. You tell the truth because that's the only thing to tell. It's the only thing worth telling. You operate from a place of integrity. You don't tell somebody you're going to do something that you have no intention of doing. And if you tell somebody you're going to do something that you do have an intention of doing, and then you find out that it's going to inconvenience you, whether it's in your time or your money or any other, your reputation, you do it anyway. That's what it means to walk in integrity. Is what I'm saying making some sense? Yes. Now, here's what's really interesting about the word for truth. The word for truth in Hebrew is the word emet, and it's spelled with an olive mem tav. Now, if you ain't that don't mean a whole lot to you. It just looks like a bunch of symbols, right? But understand that Hebrew words are both they're phonetic. Hebrew letters are phonetic, but they're also constructive. So Hebrew words are not just spelled, but Hebrew words are built. And so there it is. I made that a little bit too far away from that. There we go. Okay, so when it comes to the truth, the letter Aleph is the letter that represents God. Okay, it's the beginning of the word Elohim El Shaddai. It's made of two yods and above, yod. A yod is a hand and above is a nail. The letter that represents God is made of two hands and a nail. How mind-blowingly awesome is God, right? Okay, so this is God. This letter represents God. This mev actually spells the word death. That's the word met. And met in Hebrew, the word met is death. Remember a guy named Methuselah. Do you know what Methuselah means? The name Methuselah means his death shall bring. What does his death bring? He was Noah's grandfather. What does his death bring? The flood. And some Hebrews like rabbis and scholars believe that the flood started the day that Methuselah, like right after Methuselah died and was buried. The flood came that day as death shall bring. So death, meth is death. So God and then death. What is it? Well, it shows us a couple things. That when you attempt to remove God from the truth, all you have left is death. Where have we seen that to be true? The public school system, when the 10 Commandments were hanging on the wall and thou shalt not kill was something for everybody to see. There were no school shootings, just saying. But it also shows us that if God himself does not tell the truth, then God himself must die. Why? Because the letter mem represents the might of the ocean, the might and the chaos of the ocean. And then Tav is a cross or a covenant. So if we think about it, it's God's. The truth is God's mighty covenant. So this is why it's so important to teach from a place of integrity and speaking of the truth. Why? Because the truth is God's mighty covenant. Now you have to understand the covenant is not a contract. A contract is an agreement between two or more individuals based upon a mutual distrust. But a covenant is an agreement between two or more individuals based upon a mutual love and trust. If you enter into a covenant with somebody, you're saying to them, If I break my word to you, may I die the death of a mutilated animal. And if you break your word to me, you're saying, may you die the death of a mutilated animal. So when a covenant is a promise of love supported by your very existence, that's the P, that's the this is why God cannot lie. And then as if that's not enough, every Hebrew letter is also a number. So this letter is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. This is the middle letter, and it's also the number 40. This is the last letter, but it's also the number 400. So it's the first, middle, and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. What does that show us? You can't know the truth about anything unless you know the beginning, the middle, and the end of it. You can't look at a sliver of a story, of a concept, of a situation and know the truth. You can't remove some of the information and know the truth about it. You have to look at the whole picture. Yes, that's what this is showing us about truth. But the number for truth is 400 plus 40 is plus 1 is 441. If you add 4 to 4, it's plus 1 is 9 is the number for truth. Like 1 is the number of unit. We already talked about it. 4 is the number of the earth. 5 is the number of grace. 6 is the number of man. 7 is the number of completion. 8 is the number of infinity, eternity, abundance, the new beginning. But 9 is the number for truth. 10 is the number for perfect order. We're not going there today. We don't have time. But 9's a number for 9's number for truth. Why is that important? Because all the other numbers in the number system have to answer to the number 9. What does that mean? Thank you for asking. If you take 9, 1, 9, 2, 9, 4, 9, 5, 9, 6, 9, sun, and 9 size, thank you, I couldn't remember what came after that. 9 to 9 equals a 1. This to 2, this to 3, this to 4, this 5, this 6, this equals, oopsie, this equals 7, this equals 8, this equals 9. Oh, I forgot something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But wait, there's more. 2 to 9 or 9, 1 is 9, 9 or 2 is 18, 9 or 3 is 27. But 1 plus 8 is 9, 2 plus 7 is 9, 12 6 is 9, 4 plus 5 is 9, 5 plus 4 is 9. 6 plus 3 is 9, 7 plus 2 is 9, 8 plus 1 is 9. All the numbers in the number system have to answer to the number 9. Now watch this. As if that ain't crazy enough by itself, right? What do we learn from what? So what is that? What can we gather from that? I don't know. Maybe this. We might as well start with the truth, and we might as well stay with the truth, because at the end of the day, like it or not, we are stuck with the truth. Good. Can I get a witness? Amen. Nigel, you said you're going to be how old? 29. What? What day? 22nd. The 22nd of February. January 22nd of February, January. Okay, so which means you're 28. So Nigel's 28. Have I ever asked you how old you are before? No, sir. Never. So I just want to make sure. Nigel's 28. Somebody tell me what's 2 plus 8, 10, 10. What's 10 minus a 28, 10, 18. What's 1 plus 8, 9. What just happened? Jay, how old are you? 50, 50, 50. That's interesting. What's 5, 5, plitter, 0, 5, 55, 45. What's 4 plus 5, 9. What I'm saying is right. There is no escaping the truth. You can deny it. You can hate it. You can fight against it. You can argue against. But at the end of the day, Winston Churchill was right when he said the truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it. Ignorance may deride it. But in the end, there it is. So what am I saying? I'm saying when you are teaching, teach from a place of integrity. That's what I'm saying. Be who you are. Tell the truth. What's the nature of what's the nature? What's the inclination of God? Well, the inclination of God is good. The inclination of God is good. So what does that mean? So that means I'm operating from a place of good intentions. So I'm not seeking to do evil. I'm not seeking to take advantage of somebody when I'm teaching. I'm not teaching students. One of the big problems I see in the miseducational, misdirectional system today, and has been since I was a child, is what's the miseducational, misgovernment indoctrination camp, child prison schools, whatever what you wanted to call them, is one of the big problems we have. And with those is that in the minds of so many teachers, the students exist for the purpose of validating their degrees. Professors think and colleges think they're good professors because nobody can pass their test. That just shows what a terrible teacher you are. Doesn't make you a good teacher, makes you a loser. And so we want to make sure that we are teaching from a place of good intentions to serve people, not to use people to serve stuff to ourselves. This is how you become a better teacher. Now, that's all of the ethereal stuff. Y'all ready to get down to some practical step tools? Say, I'm ready. Okay, so you need to have a toolbox of communication tools or communication mechanisms that you can go to and apply to any new truth that you learn, so that when you're communicating that truth, it doesn't land on deaf ears. Does that make sense? Yes. So I'm going to tell you some of them you can use. You can use word pictures. What's a word picture? It's when you describe something so clearly with your words that people feel like they can see it. Does that make sense? So that's a word picture. It's really interesting. People, instead of using word pictures, what they will use is they will use clues and cleverness. What they'll do is they'll be communicating, and they'll communicate to people who don't even understand what they're saying, yet using riddles and clever statements that make them look smart, but don't make the people that they're teaching to any better off. So one of the things that I've discovered is, if you want your teaching to land better, stop trying to be impressive and seek to be impactful. Okay? So use word pictures, but also use illustrations, which are pictures like you can do like me and do great art on a digital blackboard, like some of the pictures I draw. Okay, so laughter, you can do it that way, or you can use pictures from a PowerPoint or a PowerPoint slide or digital images. But we are hyper visual people. And so in fact, we're so visual that sometimes we will say to people, do you see what I am saying? Laughter, right? Do you see what you're saying? Okay, so use illustrations. Now, one of my favorite teaching and communication tools is a tool called alliteration. I love alliterated outlines. Why? Because it makes it easier for me to remember, which means it makes it easier for the people to remember. But it also makes it easier for them to relate to, and it makes it easier for them to resonate with, because I'm not complicating it with a bunch of different words, salad, mumbo jumbo, which I hear mumbo jumbo is really in the bottom of word salad, sorry. Laughter. Okay, so alliteration, what does alliteration mean? Alliteration means when I'm creating the points of my outline, that all of the words that are the points in the outline either begin with the same letter or the same prefix, or they end with the same suffix. Like really good communicators use alliteration, even if they're not doing it intensively or they're not doing it purposefully, they do it passively because they've just developed the skill of communication. Does that make sense? So alliteration is a great tool, because the more as a teacher you distill the truth that you've dissected and discovered to people, the less work they have to put into understanding what you mean, so they can put their energy into going to apply it. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. So we're all alliteration, and then so one of the first person I've ever knew the alliteration, before I even knew the word alliteration, before I even knew what alliteration was my friend Kenny Grant back there. And y'all heard me tell the story, but now he's here, so I get to say it in front of him while he's here. And so we were talking, and I think we're outside of Emmanuel Christian School, where we dürfen Krizov for school, where we dürfen Emmanuel Krizov for school. I think that's where we were, weren't we? I think that's where we were. Kenny, how do you do that thing when you're preaching? That thing that you do where all of everything sounds like a poem, you know? And he's like, oh man, I don't know. My mind just runs that way. I literally thought, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought he don't want to tell me. He don't want to tell me. I thought we were cooler than that. No, bro. Like seriously, how do you do it? I don't know, man. All the people I read after, their mind runs that way. My mind just runs that way. Now I'm frustrated. Okay. Who are these people? So he gives me the names of some famous preachers who were really well renowned and like mega influential preachers of preachers, right? And so I went and bought some of their books. And so I'm studying how they communicate. And one of the things I discovered in those books was they use alliteration. So I'm in New York in Brooklyn speaking at my friend Vinny Sawyer's church. Vinny Sawyer is one of the best Bible teachers I've ever known. Kenny Grant's best preacher I've ever known. Like as far as community, nobody better. Vinny Sawyer, one of the best Bible teacher, one of the best two Bible teachers I've ever met in my life. And so Vinny has no ego. Like none, like Vinny's clears throat, the most humble, just easy to get along with, nice, wonderful human you ever want to meet. I'm like, Vinny, hey man, I was talking to my friend Kenny about this book, and he showed me these books, and I showed him one of the outlines, and he says, hey, that's right. I'm so confused. Like Kenny said, this is great. Vinny's saying, and I'm like, what? What's that? And I knew he wasn't doing it for ego. But like Vinny, you have a reason for saying, it's all right. What's your reason? Here's what he said to me. It changed my life forever. Vinny said, I don't like one-word points in outlines. I believe that every point in an outline should be a complete thought. I was like, what do you mean? He said like a sentence like, okay, like I have this message. Okay, for instance, like in a Philippians chapter 2, let his mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus, who it says, wherefore God also has highly exalted him and given him a name which is above every name. So I have this message that I do called why Jesus has a name above every name. And so that message, the outline is, I could have just said, well, because of his purpose and his person, right? But because of Vinny, I said, I'm going to develop this. I'm going to use my brain to think about this and make it a complete thought, because I know it's already a complete thought. So I just got to figure out how to say it as a complete thought. He has a name above every name, because he has a position above every position. Who being in the form of God thought it not robbery to be equal with God, right? But he was a person above all people in that, but he made himself of no reputation, took upon him the form of a servant, was made in the likeness of men. So he was a person above all people. Then he had a purpose above all purposes, right, who be found in passion of man. He humbled himself, became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. So he had a purpose above all purposes, and then he had power above all power, because he didn't stay dead, right? So that's what I mean when I say make every point in the outline a complete thought. Does that make sense? Okay. So I don't want to just tell you, and it's easier for me to remember this like outlines like that for sermons, that I'll give you a business lesson like 3 pages out of Apple's To the Trillion or $3 Trillion playbook. 3 pages out of Apple's $3 Trillion playbook. This is not saying that if you apply these that you will become a multi-trillion-dollar company. But if you will apply these 3 pages out of Apple's $3 Trillion playbook, whatever business you have will do better than it's doing right now. Okay, so what are the 3 pages? Number 1, Apple understands what business they're in. What business are they in? They're in the business of acquiring customers. They're not in the business of iPhones. They're not in the business of computers. They're not in the business of watches. They're not in the business of music. They're not in the business of movies. Apple is in the business of acquiring customers. Stacy, you got here just in time. Cool it off for me a little bit, please. Okay, because you somebody cooking me off the bump. Okay, so it must be warming up outside. So acquire. Apple's in the business of acquiring customers. Apple is in the business of being the customers they acquire. What do I mean? You open an Apple product, you go, wow, Apple is the only company I know in the world where when people buy the product, they'll take the product out of the box and use the box to decorate a bookshelf in their house. Why? Because Apple put that much thought into the packaging. Like, I had an Apple computer that I bought in 2006. I promise you, I did not throw the box away until 2020. The computer couldn't even get on the internet anymore. Didn't throw the box away, right? Big old box too. Big old Apple Tower. Whole. No. Kept all the packaging. Why? Okay, anyway, okay. So Apple's in the business of acquiring customers. They're in the business of aiming those customers, and they are in the business of assembling those customers for virtual and live events. It's called the Apple Developer Conference, right? And what do they do at the live events? They sell their old products to their new customers or new products to their old customers. And they keep doing that until they're worth 3,000 trillion. You see, so I just created an outline, but each point in the outline wasn't just the word there. They acquire, and they assemble. I broke it down into its components and made each point a complete thought. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the second one. Make every point a complete thought. Okay, so and lastly, the more irrefutable evidence that you provide while you're teaching, the more likely it is that people are going to buy into what you're teaching. Like, you have to present some things that are inarguable. They're incontrovertible. There's no argument against them. There's no way. So the more research you do, okay, how can I provide an illustration? It's like when I did this whole 9 illustration, right? When I did that, You're like you might come up with something, but it ain't going to argue with that, right? And so I literally inserted this so that it provides validation for what I'm teaching. It makes it easier for you to believe. Does that make sense? Okay, so make sure you provide some level of irrefutable argument at some point in what you're teaching. It will make you a better teacher. Okay, now we talked about the formula, which is the 4 levels of teaching for the 4 levels of learning. That's the formula. We talked about the frameworks, which are word pictures, illustrations. There are so many more, but I can't talk about all of them, right? Alliteration, illustrations, alliteration, complete thoughts, and irrefutable evidence. And now, what are the fruits? What's the fruit of being a better teacher? Number 1, people's lives are impacted by your teaching. People's lives are made better because you showed up as you with their best interest in mind. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay? Number 2, people's lives are influenced by your teaching. It's fascinating. I was just sharing with some folks last night, or I was sharing with Kenny last night. We were on our way back to my house. I got recognized when I was in South Africa. First time I ever go to South Africa. People like, oh, are you Byron Golden? Yeah, my whole life. Right, and so like you're in, and the reason they're so excited is because their life has been impacted. I was at the car dealership the other day taking my car to get it serviced, and I'm leaving. Some lady comes, are you my iron gold? I'm ironing gold. Nice to meet you. Oh, I watch your videos. I watch your content. It made me so much money. It's changed my life. That's the point. Amen. God put us here by ourselves, but He didn't put us here for ourselves. That's right. And so people's lives are impacted. That impact gives you influence with them. And influence comes from proving to people that you can help them by actually helping them. I don't have to talk you into the fact that maybe something I say one day will be helpful. One of the number 1 comments we get on my videos like, how can you teach us this for free? Well, it's not really free. You have to pay with your attention, and then people's lives are improved by your teaching. If you will apply these principles, by the way, you don't have to apply all of them day 1. Just start applying them one by one. And if you will do that, you will become a better teacher, a better communicator, whether it be to your own children or to students if you're a teacher in a classroom, or to clients if you're a business leader, or to congregants if you're a pastor. It doesn't matter. Or to your audience if you're an influencer. If you will apply these principles and work on becoming better at communicating, because becoming better is what we were all created to do. Because the first thing that God ever said to man was, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. Which means be becoming progressively productive in your experience of life. And if you'll do that, I have a sneaky suspicion you will not be disappointed. And the impact that you will leave on the world will be much greater because you became hyper-focused on being hyper-intentional about being a more clear communicator. Hopefully this is helpful, and hopefully if you'll apply it, I know it'll take your life to another level. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.